Oh, hello there.
Hello, chum.
Hello. Hello, chum.
Yes.
Chum. You know, it's funny. I was just about to say hello. Well, it's Chinwag. Hello and welcome to Chinwag. I was just about to say, I am Paul Giamatti, and this is my friend, Stephen Asma. I was like, it's not adequate. Friend isn't adequate.
Chum is closer, I think.
Chum.
It's not used like it should be. It's an important.
No. Chum is a good one. Did you ever read the Hardy Boys when you were a kid?
I did.
You read the Hardy Boys books?
And Encyclopedia Brown and all that, yeah.
See, I didn't read the encyclopedia. I just read the Hardy Boys.
You're not going to get haughty on me now because I read the fucking encyclopedia.
No,
because I
I think that's probably
there was a tone. Oh,
no, Jesus! I guess we're not chums anymore, huh? I guess this is it. Holy cow!
Come on, a little.
Holy no! I just was going to say. Actually, I think Encyclopedia Brown's a little bit more brainy than the Hardy Boys. I was just going to say no. I stuck with the low rent Hardy Boys, but they always called each other chums.
They did.
They were always like my chum, whoever it was in that.
Yeah, kind of the British.
Joe and Frank had their chums.
That 19th century, chum.
Yeah,
but then
well, it was kind of 50s, too.
Yeah, that's right. Even you'll hear it in like film noir, and you're like, wow, they're using chum.
Yeah, what do you say, chum?
Exactly.
Yeah, how about that one, chum? Yeah, it seems really weird. That's really strange. Anyway, my dear chum, Dr. Stephen Asma, welcome.
Absolutely.
This is a special little episode.
This is fun.
We've received letters. We received wonderful musings from our fine and loyal listeners. And we have a great letter that we're going to read today from a fellow in Japan.
Yeah, Arthur in Japan. We've actually gotten a few.
Our reach is vast,
it's worldwide. We've gotten a few things from
it's global.
We're big in Japan. That's the point.
We're huge in Japan. I think we've received things from all over the globe. Romania? Did we get one from Romania?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
No, I just shattered my dreams, my hopes.
But we've
dreams
gotten a few things from down under. Down under.
Yes, we have. Which would be Australia, just for people who maybe think that was a euphemism for something. It actually means Australia. Arthur in Japan, who wrote us about something that neither Steve or I had ever heard of, which is Thomas Edison's invention that he obviously never marketed, that may not have even made, which was a spirit phone.
A spirit phone.
It was this. Yeah,
I even love the name of it, the spirit phone. It's just a great idea.
Totally.
You could talk to the other side or something, or hear from the other side.
He really could have. Yeah, somehow it's not entirely clear what he was going to do, but neither of us had ever even heard of this thing.
It's something that, has caught on a little bit. The kids on TikTok are using this kind of like a spirit box, and so they're into it. But I didn't realize that Edison was actually working on something like this. Fascinating.
So Edison is today's news.
That's right.
Actually, isn't that incredible?
That's
He's back. And so we're going to talk about that. And because Steve and I like to make associations, it rang a bell for us about when we talked to good old Bill Shatner.
That's right.
Back in the day.
And if you haven't heard that whole episode with Shatner, go back and find that, because it's from the early days of the Chinwag, and it's fantastic. And this is a chunk that's brand new that we haven't aired before.
But before we do that, actually, don't forget, go to Apple Podcasts.
Head on down to Apple Podcasts, people. Rank, review us,
guys.
Give us that feedback.
Absolutely.
It's very helpful.
We'd love to hear from you guys. Because who knows? Yeah, we might read your letter on the air, as we're about to do. As we are about to do with this letter from a chap named Arthur in Japan. Let's listen in.
Dear Professor Asma, you don't even get recognized here in this letter, buddy.
Yeah, see what I count? See, I don't count. Okay.
Congratulations to you and co-host Paul Giamatti on this year's launch of your podcast, Chinwag. I've begun listening and find it very interesting. If it might be of interest, I'd like to ask you to cover the topic of Thomas Edison's rumored invention of a device to contact the dead, the so-called spirit phone. Incredible. This is really amazing.
This is good. This is good.
I had not heard of it. I don't think
neither
you had either, maybe?
No,
before?
neither had I.
So then Arthur continues here. He says, at the risk of covering points to which you are already well aware, which we're not,
I love that.
While speculation abounds, what is beyond dispute is that in an interview with B.C. Forbes for the October 1920 issue of the American Magazine, Edison proposed the idea of building a communication device to aid psychical researchers in seeking proof of life after death. Later that month, Scientific American requested an interview with Edison to ask him to clarify his ideas on the device. There is no known evidence that Edison ever followed up on this idea, as there are apparently no extant notes, plans, or equipment. The original 1948 edition of Edison's posthumously published memoirs includes a final chapter titled The Realms Beyond, which includes his speculations about life after death and using technology to contact spirits. However, the chapter is redacted from all subsequent editions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Amazing.
And he says, to my podcast topic request, I wish you and Mr. Giamatti the best of success going forward. Thank you very much, Arthur. Appreciate the question.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I had not heard about this.
Really cool.
You had never heard about this.
I had never heard. I had never heard of this before.
The inventor of the light bulb, and you know, this guy, you know, the phonograph, the light bulb. I mean, there's all kinds of theories about him stealing ideas and stuff like that. But
that's right.
But this, I had no idea. I had no idea.
He had like something like 1,000 patents or several hundred.
Crazy. Amazing.
Patents, some ridiculous number. But
Super
I did not know
weird.
that he was interested in a spirit phone.
No. And it's interesting how many of these kind of early 20th century guys, I mean, it's like Houdini was interested in this stuff. And he was like, you know, in theory, like skeptical about things and was a magician and knows that things, but he buys into Arthur Conan Doyle, writes Sherlock Holmes.
That's right.
Ends up being interested in this stuff. Thomas Edison, who is, you know, if nothing, and not a man of science in some way, is like is
paragon of
for
science.
It's going for this stuff. It's interesting, that whole thing of like, you know, Newton was an alchemist and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of cool that, you know,
secret history of these.
And that seems to die out. That seems to, I don't think you're going to find a whole lot of like guys now who are going to cop to being like,
you're
I
totally
don't think you're going to
correct.
find some engineer now who's like, yeah, I got a perpetual motion machine in my closet. You know what I mean? Who's like,
he's working on it.
Yeah, probably is a guy. I'm sure there are guys like that out there, but whether I'm going to call them a legit engineer, you're not going to find a guy who's like, you know, eminent Harvard engineer.
Well,
I think
the level
of somebody. Really?
I think you're wrong. I think that.
Really?
Okay, I think there are guys who, men and women who are practicing scientists who are open to a lot of paranormal and sci things and weird, but there is a kind of science police. And these guys get on podcasts and on newscasts. They are like, scientists believe this. There's nothing supernatural. There's nothing unempirical. And they are policing the border. But I think real scientists are more open-minded.
You're right. And when they do that, it's like that guy John Mack, who was the psychiatry professor at Harvard, who came out about alien abduction, and that was kind of it for that guy.
It hurt his career. Yeah,
it sure did. Yeah, and even now
so
there's that guy.
Bracket it out.
There's that guy Ari Loeb at Harvard, the astronomer, who's saying he's finding, you know, and I'm sure it's not doing.
Is
him a
he the
hell of a
guy
lot
that
of good.
says he's seen some UFO tech or
he's the guy who thought
something?
that Oumuamua, that thing, that object that was floating through space a little while ago, the long thing.
The long
he was convinced it was
thing.
a vehicle of some kind. And it was that it was an alien artifact or vehicle or something. Oumuamua, I think it was called.
Because
and now
it
moved
moved strange. It kind of had a strange trajectory.
The whole thing of it was strange. It was like, it was just strange. And it was weird looking, and it was like, but now he claims that, yes, he's maybe found like these weird particles that he thinks are, I don't know, from a meteor or something like that, or found in a meteorite.
I didn't know
or
that's the
something
same
like that.
guy. Okay.
I think that's the same guy.
He may not be teaching much longer.
He may not be at Harvard much longer, but he's going to have a TV show. But this whole thing was fascinating to me, super fascinating to me. And it inspired me to do two things, which is to look at these magazines, to find online this magazine from the 20s and the Scientific American from the same era. And first of all, these magazines are incredible.
They're awesome.
Incredible to look at. First of all, they're comprehensive. They're like 300 pages long. It's like, you know, and it's like the ads are great and stuff like that. But it's actually amazing how contemporary they seem still. You know what I mean? It's like how much it hasn't really changed that much, magazine culture, for much as they exist anymore. It's like, you know, but how much they still look like that is really incredible, you know? But I had to, and in reading this interview with him, it was really wild to read some of what he said. And one thing he said really jumped out at me that I just want to read. Because it's like, this is Thomas Edison saying,
1920,
he's talking about why he's building this thing. And he's being very cagey about it in some ways, at least in this first interview. In the second one, he's less forthcoming because I think he realized, whoops, I shouldn't have been saying this stuff. Because now everybody thinks I'm nuts, which is really funny. Because in the second one, he's just like, okay, let me set the record straight. I didn't say that I believe in ghosts. He's very like, but this first one, he's kind of like, he's shooting his mouth off a little bit. But he talks about all kinds of things. But he does say, let me see, I have a theory of my own which would explain scientifically the existence in us of what is termed our subconscious mind. This was something I thought really jumped out at me. It is quite possible that those spiritualists who declare they receive communications from another world allow their subconscious minds to predominate over their ordinary everyday minds and permit themselves to become, in a sense, hypnotized into thinking that their imaginings are actualities, that what they imagine as occurring while they are in this mental state really has occurred.
That's awesome.
And I was like, that's the shit we talk about all the time.
The imagination.
Which is that you're like, but he's applying it only to spiritualists. And I'm like, everybody does that.
Yes, everybody does.
Doesn't everybody do that? But he has all kinds of crazy, which I just thought was amazing to hear him saying that. And that's a cool thing to read in 1920. Somebody is saying.
That feels really modern too, the way he describes it.
Yeah, that there's this,
how do you invent so much shit without like really chasing after your own imagination? Like his own imagination must have been a huge part of his mental life. And,
totally.
And I think it's a huge part of everybody's mental life, but he really put it to work because, he's just a great innovator.
Totally. It was all imagination. And he was not. He was a self-educated guy, I think. He was not. He was a completely self-educated guy. Right?
I don't know much about his education, but he's sort of like in that kind of Henry Ford, Edison, like basically can-do practical knowledge.
Yeah, and he goes on to talk about his sort of theory. Sorry, I'm just looking ahead. Yes, it was all that kind of self-made man, pull yourself up. But he goes on to expound a theory that's really, I just have to read this because I find it really fascinating.
Do it.
He talks about how none of us understand anything. We don't know what water is. We don't know what electricity is. Yeah. We don't know what anything is. We don't know why we breathe. We don't know why. He goes in this whole thing. The more we learn, the more we realize that there is in life things which we used to regard as inanimate, as lifeless. We now know that the difference between the lowest known forms of animal life and trees or flowers or other plants is not so very great. Small as these units of life are, they can still contain a sufficient number of ultimate particles of matter to form highly organized entities or individuals with memory, certain varieties of skill, other attributes of living entities. Yeah. We in our ignorance of all that pertains to life have come to imagine that if certain things happen to a human being or an animal, its whole life ceases. This notion has been repeatedly. He makes this whole case for there being sort of consciousness in objects. Things being filled with particles of life. And I mean, it's almost like quantum shit that he's talking about. And it's like, and they're indestructible. These things are indestructible too. And so his idea is that personality can survive because it has this energy in it, this indestructible energy.
It's like a sort of a thermodynamics principle, like where once you get broken up, you die, then your heat goes into other things, like my heat goes into the ground and becomes worm food. And if my heat or the elements like that can leave and basically remanifest in other forms, he calls it swarms.
Yes.
He calls it swarms of energy. Your personality is made of swarms of energy.
Which is really cool.
And then that goes out of your body.
And he makes this very kind of, he must have been, I don't know if he was an atheist or what he was. He must have been high. He must have been tripping. I don't know if he was an atheist or what he was. It's interesting.
No, at one point he says, like, I'm not, because the interviewer says if you're worried that he's an atheist or something, I think there's some quick, they poo-poo that immediately.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, probably he felt he had to say that. But the equivalency, the fact that he says like a chair, a lion and a guy are the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, is really radical for that time, right? That's really cool. That's out there.
Yeah,
it's really
cool. I think
that
he's and we've talked about this before, at this time, at the turn of the century, the teens, the 20s. There's all this influence coming like from the East. There's these world conferences that are happening at the World Exposition in Chicago, the Theosophical Society.
That's right.
All these Blavatsky, all that stuff. And I hear him sort of talking about, and Einstein too, because Einstein's saying, look, matter is energy, energy is matter.
Yeah.
He's using it to sort of talk about this age-old problem of like, what could there be life after the body is dead?
Totally. Totally.
It's fascinating.
And then he talks about the actual device, which is some crazy sounding. I mean, he actually talks about it a little
apparatus.
Bit. Yeah, but it's like a weird horn. It sounds almost like a phonograph or something. It sounds a little bit similar to the phonograph. It's not that different. It's bigger or something, he says. But then he kind of stopped. This is in the next interview in Scientific American. And he's kind of like, but I'm not going to talk about this anymore. Yeah, he's just like, he clearly is like, what did I just do?
But why couldn't we find any, record of it? Like there's no like half-built thing anywhere. You know what I mean? Like it's like he almost said, burn all this stuff. You know?
Maybe. Well, the chapter in his book is redacted. Clearly at some point he was like, this was stupid. Let's take this out because I don't want to talk about this. That's a great idea. That's a good plot for somebody. Somebody finds fucking Edison's spirit phone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that totally. That guy who wrote us that letter, Arthur, elaborated further, and he actually has written a novel about Tesla and Edison, I think.
Yes.
And
it looks interesting.
It does. And there's a whole school of thought that Edison stole this idea from Tesla, as there's many schools of thought that he stole a lot of his ideas from Tesla.
I don't know much about this area.
Neither do I, but I read a little bit, and Arthur, who wrote this message, is a great defender of Edison over Tesla, which is not something you run into all the time. Most people take Tesla's side, and he actually says, whoa, let's stop like completely discrediting Edison for things. Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah, which is really interesting. But it's really, there's a thing that fascinates me. I'm just gonna take a fucking detour, but I'm gonna do it.
That's
it's
what
really
our show's for, man.
The whole sort of like these technologies like this, because sometimes when you go back and look at these things, I mean, electricity for him, obviously, electricity changes the game. But it's like there's a really cool thing. Have you ever seen that they found a recording of the human voice that predates way before they thought people were recording the human voice? And it's from like the 1840s or something. And it's on this waxed piece of paper on a cylinder, but it's sort of electrified and everything like that, I think. And it's
some
like
analog.
Yeah, and you can hear it. You can listen to it online, and it's a woman singing a French song, and it's really creepy because it's super ghostly and spectral, and you can barely hear her voice. But it predates by like 40 years or something when they thought people could develop technology like this,
maybe
or even more.
If you vibrate like a wire,
that's
and then
what it was. It's basically somehow it actually worked. Somehow it actually worked, which makes me go, if it was that easy to do, like I could imagine like Da Vinci did it. You know what I mean? Like maybe Da Vinci did this.
If it's just mechanical.
Yeah, if it doesn't necessarily require anything other than that.
Yeah, shit comes to light like centuries later. Like Da Vinci's stuff didn't even get discovered for hundreds of years. And look at our man Swedenborg as designing like flying machines and shit.
Totally. Yeah, all this kind of crazy stuff. It's really cool. So maybe somebody will try to rediscover Edison's spirit phone.
Well, now I got to say this, like during COVID lockdown, I was told this by the youngsters, my son and my niece. Apparently, the idea of a spirit box got very popular during COVID, and it's the idea, and I think you've looked at these too, it's like basically a radio, and it's sort of scanning all of the frequencies, so it's running through all of the radio stations. You could do this with like a police scanner too. And then every once in a while, you've done this driving down the road. All of a sudden, some like other voice from another station will punch through and just like appear in the middle of your song or whatever. And there's a whole now movement of young folks on YouTube and TikTok that are collecting these devices and trying to, they're trying to dial in.
So this is a thing. So this is a thing. It's like that's called EVP, isn't it? Electronic
EVP,
voice phenomenon.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a whole thing. EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, is this thing where you can leave a tape recorder in an empty room and it will pick up a haunted room and it'll pick up maybe the voices of people. So
a ghostly voice comes through the device.
I used to have a CD back in the day. I must still have it somewhere that had a lot of famous examples of like EVP in it. And I gotta say they were not tremendously convincing, but they were on there. But so this is a thing now. So people are.
It's gotten popular again.
And it's like shortwave.
Yeah.
Although there's nothing on shortwave anymore. When you listen to shortwave now, nobody uses shortwave anymore. And I bet
they'll go to a cemetery and they'll walk around with this thing as it scans through, and then they'll record it all, and then they'll hunt through the recording to see if they catch actual sentences or fragments that are meaningful.
They're not thinking to themselves, it's just WJBL Cincinnati like popping through for a second. Right. Of course, it's like, guys, that's, it's like, yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, that's what a lot of the EVP that that's my God, it's a game from the past. And it's like, no, but I mean, that's what I have to say. Even I am a little bit like, because the stuff I've heard.
This is where you draw the line.
It's an angelic choir. And I'm like, it's, NPR, Phoenix, Arizona playing like, Beethoven or something. I mean, it's not necessarily, who knows what it is.
I'm very skeptical
I'm a little bit skeptical.
But I love the impulse because it's saying there could, in the same way that Edison is saying, you have swarms of energy that make up your personality. There's a sense in which ever since electromagnetic stuff was discovered, it's been a good way to think about, like, could you continue after the physical body?
Totally. And I've said before, and this I do think that a lot of this weird phenomenon I've experienced has been around electricity, like electrical things have been involved. The kind of premonitory stuff with the radio or knowing the phone's going to ring and stuff like that. There's lots of like these weird sort of psychic moments that relate to electricity, I think, a lot. And I think there's some kind of relationship. There is a whole, by the way, and before we move off of this, there is a whole phenomenon of phone calls from the dead. And somewhere on these shelves of mine, I have a book that's called Phone Calls from the Dead.
Really? And like your phone, your house phone rings?
And it was written, this was back when you had rotary phones and stuff like that. Although I'm sure I wonder if it would happen on a cell phone. It'd be interesting. That people get this on a cell phone, get text messages from the dead, which seems pretty easy to freak somebody out doing that. But that people would get calls from people and it would be the moment of their dying, and then they would find out that the person died at that time and they got a phone call, or they were getting phone calls from dead people. But this is.
Are you saying this is a real phone call where the person is dying, or it's like a spirit?
No, it's a spirit.
Okay. No. So I'm like, dude, get down here, I'm dying.
that would be phone calls from the dying. That would be a different thing. No, that's terrible. You quick, give me a phone. It's me. I'm dying. No, phone calls from people who. From people who are dead. No, from people who are dead. That's very funny. No, that's awesome. No, from people who are dead. And so things would happen like they would find it. It's like when it's like the phenomenon of people having a visitation from somebody. I saw Uncle Bob walking in my room and then he disappeared. And then you find out later that's right when Uncle Bob died. Wow. And so there's a similar thing with the phone things, but there's also ones that are just straight up coming from people who are dead and stuff like that, but who have been dead for a while, not the dying. Yes.
Well, here's a kind of a disturbing thought, which is like, do you really want to be like one of your energy personality swarms floating disembodied out in the ether? Because that sounds like it could be fucking hell. Like we all imagine that the personality is going to be like sipping on a pina colada in heaven, but you could just be some disassembled self floating in pieces. You know what I mean? Like, that's creepy. Yeah.
No, it's just, but I guess that's why so much ghost lore has so much despair and pain attached to it, of you're trapped. They're
trying to,
Like you're stuck here. You can't get out of here. You know what I mean? And why, and I guess it accounts for a lot of that. But well, there you go. See, an awesome letter.
Yeah.
A really
amazing.
a provocative letter.
And
from Arthur in Japan.
It really inspired us, as we talk about, to get into actually Edison's, writings from back in 1920, and it's so interesting.
Totally cool.
Really fascinating.
Super interesting. The whole thing is interesting. An Edison Tesla thing would be an interesting thing to dig into more.
There needs to be a
or
movie
just
on that.
just Edison, or just there must be.
Yeah.
There's got to be
a
some
movie
kind of movie. There ought to be. But anyway, we had the fantastic letter. This is getting back to why it reminded us of Mr. William Shatner, who we interviewed back way back in, what was it, like May 3rd?
Yeah, if you have not heard that or seen that,
Yeah.
please go and listen to that episode, because it is hilarious. And Shatner is
Off
amazing.
the chain.
Yeah, he's amazing.
We talked about tequila, wine, mushrooms, the afterlife, death, space travel, his greatness, basically Shatner's greatness.
Yes.
We talked about a lot. He was amazing.
It was a fun
He was
episode.
amazing, and it was really great. Listen to it, but we actually, it reminded us of this little
gem, a little
wonderful little gem
chunk
from that during this conversation we had, and we wanted to just throw that in there because we asked Big Bill Shatner, if he believes in ghosts.
Yeah.
And if he had any thoughts about the paranormal. And here's what he had to say.
Here he is. What's your feelings about ghosts? Do you think that there are ghosts, or that you might become a ghost, or is that related to this at all?
I love the ghostly idea, but to me, and I know all kinds of people, including my wife, have seen people who were dead alive,
Really?
and just died, and before they got noticed, there was the person sitting in the room. I've never seen. I yearn to have that out-of-body experience. I've never had one.
And you've never had an encounter. You've never seen or felt a ghost.
No. And the phrase, whatever it is, stranger things in heaven and earth. There, the world. Let me start to begin the thought. We're looking out at the universe through all our sophisticated webs and telescopes and seeing this incredible universe. We know that at the moment the furthest celestial body is 13.8 billion light years away. So it took all that time for that photon of light to meet my eye. Where is that galaxy gone in 13.8 billion years? It's been moving out. We know it's expanding. So where's it gone? We don't know where it's gone. No. It's limitless.
Yes.
Okay. So we know, we think we know that. And on the other hand, we know that now they're guessing, that we only can perceive 5% of the universe, that the other 95% is dark matter and dark energy. So we're looking like through what? Gauze or a cloud or through impenetrable concrete. What are our observations worth?
We know
95%.
Right.
What?
Essentially, you're saying we know nothing.
We know no shit.
We know nothing.
And everything is suspect.
Yes.
The speed of light is supposed to be the
constant.
The basic thing.
Yeah.
I'll guarantee you.
That'll be different next week.
Next week. Oh, Jesus, we found out that isn't.
Yeah.
You just know that's going to happen.
But that's
how did they find tectonic plates 100 years ago? When it's obvious. Big Bang. We just did another 100 years ago. Some guy in 1947, I think.
And it's all going to change. It's all going to change.
There's
It's all going to change.
Big Bang, a little point of light, it all exploded, and you can hear it.
Yeah.
How do they know that when the 95%, it's all bleak? It's all.
We don't know shit. We don't know shit.
We don't know anything.
Yep. We don't know anything, Steve.
We
don't know shit.
We think we know something, but we don't.
Yep. We don't know goddamn anything. Absolutely true.
Well, that's very true of the
true.
Chinwag, but even the scientists don't know anything. Well,
nobody knows
let me
anything.
back it off a little.
Nobody knows anything. Listen,
The theologians.
Shatner, with the most profound insight of all, we don't know shit. We don't know anything. He's absolutely right. It was a great time with Bill Shatner.
It was great.
It really
yeah.
was. It was amazing.
I find it
You should
liberating
listen
to
whole
not
thing.
know anything. I find that very liberating.
I do
I'm
too.
not depressed
I
by
actually
that.
think it's great to know. And the older I get, and he's well in advance of us, he's really knows we don't know shit.
That's some wisdom.
He knows we do not know diddly squat. Anyway, that was our 5th episode from May 3rd of 2023. Go back and listen to it because the whole thing
the whole
is great.
conversation is great.
Oh, God. That's it. That's it. We hope everybody has a very splendid, lovely, fun-filled weekend.
Yes, and
thank you for listening, as always.
And wag on weirdos.
Wag on weirdos.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Our associate producer is Andrew Miller. Original theme music by Luke Top, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Audio production, supervision, and editing by Maxwell Carney. Additional audio assistance and mixing by Jeff Neal, with additional production management from Renee Levesque. Clara Wong is Celestial Empress of Benevolent Knowledge. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.